Hi, folks. Steven here. So, this is going to be another one of Anne and I's discussions of Pokemon music. Today, we're actually doing a double header. I had kind of forgotten that Pokemon Rumble U was a Gen 5 side game and not a Gen 6 side game a couple episodes ago. We even did our split thing already between generations, but I want to give it a fair chance. But at the same time, it has a lot of recycled music. So we're going to do a double header with that and another game, which is the actual first sixth generation side game that also has actually a lot of reused music. Well, not a lot of reused music. It has a very small soundtrack, but still worth talking about, and that is Pokemon Battle Trozei for the 3DS. So that's kind of the gist of things there. So that'll be our discussion. We have a fair number of things. Before we get too far in, so we can give some folks a chance, there has been a little bit of music news that's come in over the last couple of weeks. There's been stuff going off and on. We have an interesting one to talk about during our feedback section of this presentation, which we will still do. We'll also still do a game discussion of both games that we also hope to keep relatively brief. But let's see, about a week ago, they put, I think it was called another thing from the Pokemon Music Collective, Ghost Dive, which had a neat little, obviously, ghost-themed music video to go with it. I like that one. And then just the day before we did this, they've been teasing out the various types of art, in other words, various Pokemon types of art for it, but Hatsune Miku has the first song out there. I don't think, it's not bad per se, but it didn't really do a lot for me either. I think Anne enjoyed it a little bit more than I did.
Vocaloid and me, like, I write songs with Vocaloid, like, so, and Deco Nina, the who is the lyricist and the music producer, is like our hero. Like, Deco Nina is up there as one of the great Vocaloid creators. So, like, I'm just excited to see who else gets a song. Like, is Neru gonna compose a song with Miku, or like Rin, or like, another Vocaloid? I'm so excited. Like, what?
I think they did mention for each of the costumes for every type, they did mention who the artist was. I don't know if they mentioned anything about the actual music production.
Well, yeah, Deco Nina is the music production, so.
Yeah. So in any case, I mean, this isn't, not that I dislike all the Japanese Pokemon music. And this video they put out like yesterday does have subtitles. Although I think for music that may, because you get a disconnect between the literal translation of the lyrics and like the actual pace of the music. I think that maybe helps a little bit, but not really. You know what I mean? Like, it's nice to have them, but I'm not sure it really helps the experience as much as it does for like subtitles in a regular anime, you know what I mean, where you're not as tied to the rhythm of the actual thing there, if that makes sense. Certainly there's there's 18 types of 17 more to go.
I mean, I would say if you're not like super into Vocaloid, like, I mean, not that Vocaloid doesn't encompass a wide variety of genres and like, but if this isn't your jam, I don't see you being super impressed with anything that comes out. Like, Vocaloid music, especially from the Japanese producers, kind of tends to have a bit of a Dempa quality to it. So you might be in for a rough time.
That is a word we may be bringing up again later in our actual discussion there, Denpa, because of Genius Sonority's pedigree. But before we actually get started here, we're going to do a little warm-up game like we've been doing for most of our streams here. Mm-hmm. So this is another AI-ish based one. So let me sort of explain for this one. So we're doing a lot of imagery-based stuff for this. I wanted to try doing something audio. So what I did is I did ask Anne about this, so she's okay with it. But I took a bunch of audio these are all from podcast episodes that have already been released. So just to be clear about that, they're all in the podcast feed if you're playing along at home. And what I did is I took a bunch of quotes from Anne, a bunch of quotes from me, and actually just dumped them in the folder and trained an AI voice model based on a combination. And then what I did is I took a bunch of like quotes from different episodes, and I manipulated them to be kind of in between our two voices. If you want more technical details, you can drop me an email or something like that, pokepress@gmail.com, and I'll give you the whole shebang about all the weird stuff that happened here. But what's going to happen is basically I have 5 quotes from 5 different episodes. And like I said, I trained the model using a combination of Ann and I's voices. And I pitched it so that it was in between. So it pulls characteristics from both Ann's voice and my voice into this very strange amalgamation, to be honest. And so the goal here is, first of all, you're going to want to try and figure out who's speaking, if it's me or Ann. Secondly, you're going to try and figure out what episode it's from. And I guess third, although you can probably, those last 2 you can try and swap around, what we're actually talking about within the episode. Like I said, there are 5 of these clips. I've put them on here. I'll play them one at a time. I'll play first the actual audio, or not the actual, the distorted audio, basically speaking. And then I'll play, once we've gotten through that, the audio for the unedited audio, basically. And we'll kind of go from there. So this is a little bit of an experiment before we do our actual discussion. Feel free to type some guesses into the chat there. We'd certainly love to hear that. But Ann, like I said, so here is our first, like I said, this is the distorted in-between version.
Yeah, there's something really special about this version that Westlife does. Obviously there's the whole, boy band type of aesthetic, or whatever you want to call it there, that gives these songs a fair bit of appeal, but it's well performed and definitely worth checking out.
Okay, Ann, let's see. I should actually probably put my headphones on directly. I can't actually hear what's going directly through my mixer with some of this stuff, so I should put my earphones on so that I can actually do that, so I don't get this wrong when I tell Ann whether she was right or wrong here. So one second.
Oh boy.
So Ann, first of all, do you think I or you said that?
This is harder than I thought it was going to be, because
I can play it again if you'd like to hear it again.
let me talk it through myself, because on the one hand there were a lot of and I know that's a verbal tick I have. At the same time, there was something about the intonation that felt very much like you, but I don't know if I can trust that, because this AI is very good at its job. I'm gonna guess it was you.
All right, well, let's listen to the actual clip, and then we'll go on to the other 2 questions here. So here's the actual audio. Yeah, there's something really special about this version that Westlife does. Obviously there's the whole, boy band type of aesthetic, or whatever you want to call it there, that gives these songs a fair bit of appeal, but it's well performed and definitely worth checking out. Okay, so that was definitely me speaking there. You heard something about Westlife. First of all, what episode do you think this is from?
I'm gonna guess this is the one where we did Pokemon Live musics.
Well, not from the stage show Pokemon Live, but yes, that is the episode. We are
Right,
talking
yes.
about
Pokemon songs that were performed live.
live Pokemon music is what we call that. We'll probably do a part 2 on that at some point. And I guess fairly obviously we're talking about Westlife's live performance of Flying Without Wings. There's not another Pokemon song yet they did. I actually heard recently they're doing their first real U.S. tour on that this fall. I think they may have just started it a week or 2 ago or whatever. So they're trying to finally break into the North American market for reals, I guess. But yes, that is correct there. That is our live Pokemon music. All right, let's move on to the second clip then and see where that gets us.
It just has such a grandiose sense of we're going to battle now, that I think really fits this game, and really it is a very recognizable Pokemon theme that.
All right, that's all you're getting there, Ann. Was that you or was that me?
I think that's the rhythm of how I talk. So I'm gonna guess it's me.
All right.
Tears of Life is a very good. Tears of Life.
Sorry. You can wait on that one for a little bit. Sorry.
It just has such a grandiose sense of we're going to battle now, that I think really fits this game, and really it's a very recognizable Pokemon theme that.
All right then. So not a ton of information in there though. Let me just take a quick look here. Okay, yes, I know which one this is now, because it's
Right.
Yeah, it's a very short clip there. What are we talking about there? Which episode do you think this is from, and what do you think we're talking about?
Okay. Can you play it one more time?
Sure.
If that's possible?
Oh yeah, I can go back and forth on this.
Okay, good.
So here's the actual clip. Then this is the real audio from the episode.
It just has such a grandiose sense of like we're going to battle now that I think really fits this game, and really it's a very recognizable Pokemon theme that.
Yep, and that's what you're going to get there.
Is
so think about
it the Super Smash Brawl or one of the Super Smash games where they used the Pokemon Center theme but made it like epic boss battle music?
You're close, but not quite. Now, remember, I have not gotten the Brawl episode out on the podcast feed yet, so it wouldn't have been eligible for this discussion. So, it's definitely not Brawl. But I think we may have discussed Smash Brothers in some other episode. Do you want to think about it a little more?
Whichever one came out for the Wii first that wasn't Brawl.
Smash Brothers for the Wii is Brawl. Is Brawl, yes.
Okay, so whichever one came before that.
Okay, so this is us talking about Super Smash Brothers Melee. Remember we did a combined episode on Super Smash Brothers 64 and Super Smash Brothers Melee for the GameCube, because they have, not super small soundtracks, but compared to later games, my goodness, not even close. In any case, so yeah, here we're talking about the Melee version of the Pokemon theme, the one with the choir and stuff like that.
Right. Okay.
Which I felt was very moving, but that was you talking about it there. I forget which of us actually picked that track. It was you or me to discuss. All right, here's number 3 here.
Tears of Life is a very good song. And in the world of Pokemon Scores, where we don't have a ton of super iconic tracks, it is one of the ones that people recognize.
Okay, another kind of short one. You can probably figure out what that's about, but was that you or was that me?
I'm going to guess it was me.
Okay, let's find out then. Oops, I only want to go there. Yeah, it auto-advances the next track, but it doesn't play it, so that's kind of the tricky part with all of this.
Tears of Life is a very good song.
So that is you.
And in the world of Pokemon Scores, where we don't have a ton of super iconic tracks,
I'm doing way better on this AI.
It is one of the ones that people recognize.
Yeah, on the guessing games with the Pokemon Master screenshots and guess the album art based on the description. That one was particularly rough on you.
I'm flashing back to my college days where all I did was listen to how people talked and try to imitate it.
All right then. First of all, you probably have a decent idea. You can narrow it down, but which episode was this?
Okay. I mean, if my first guess is way back when we were talking Pokemon movies, but
well, we kind of are, but
this is not it. So is it Pokemon Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolutions, and we're talking about the score?
It is, but here's the tricky part. We did 3 episodes on that. Can you name which one? Sorry. That's the tricky part.
One where we talked about the plot, so it's probably not that one. I mean, I guess the first one we did where we're specifically talking about the score and the dub score versus the Japanese score.
All right, I'll just kind of answer this one for you.
Sorry.
So we have 3 episodes. The order that we recorded them, we recorded them in 2 segments. We had to split one of them up. But the way it shakes out is the first episode is about the ending theme songs, and then a song that wasn't in the remake, We're a Miracle, is a big part of that. The second one is where this is from. This is the rest of the music, so that includes the absence of Brother My Brother and the score. And then we did a 3rd episode where we talked about the remake from a technical and writing perspective. So this is sort of that middle episode there. So yes, I know I was being kind of tricky with that one and kind of messing you up there. All right, so that with that, we're going to move on to, this is our fourth clip.
It seems like virtually everything else has some sort of parallel, either with Coco or with Dada's Root, or the two of them are waiting with Ash and stuff like that. Lost and Found at the same time. I don't know if I mentioned that one yet, but...
All right. Which of us is that? Is that you or is that me?
I'm gonna... it's so weird, because, like... It sounds like you, but the vocal quality is hard to tell, and like the cadence, in a way, the way of talking is very you, but some of the thoughts are very me. So it's like, I'm gonna guess you. It's you.
It seems like virtually everything else has some sort of parallel, either with Coco or with Dada's Root,
So,
or
yeah,
the two
you're
of them,
right.
or even with Ash and stuff like that. Lost and Found at the same time. I don't know if I mentioned that one yet, but...
So yes, that was me talking there, just to give the folks at home a little bit of perspective. Since Anne and I have different pitches to our voices, we're about 5 to 7 semitones. 12 would be a full octave apart. If I pitched it up, it would sound more like her. If I pitched it down, it would sound more like me. If I left it in the middle, you get that weird stuff that you hear right in this discussion here. But, all right then. So what, you can probably guess, what episode was that we were talking about? Well, you got two choices. Probably.
Okay, I'm gonna guess it was the one where we were talking about Pokemon 25, and this was one of the many songs that we were like, this should have been like a Coco movie tie-in.
Right, so this is Pokemon 25.
To the jungle,
Yeah,
but
and we were thinking, like, some of these songs seem like they might have originally been intended for Secret to the Jungle. Which song are we talking about here?
the one that Sin did, I forget the name.
Yeah, you're right. It's wonderful, and of course she did do songs for the other two, for two songs for the actual movie. But our suspicion, and we don't have real proof of this, but judging from some of the context, it's a little hard to ignore, is that some of them, or several of the songs may have been originally intended, and perhaps at one point Secrets of the Jungle was going to get a theatrical release, and that got scuttled because of the pandemic and not getting a pediatric vaccine soon enough or whatever, and they said, okay, we're going to split these things apart, because it seems like there's a couple other things. There's some urban jungly aspects in Gotham, for sure. And Art Show is kind of a weird outlier unless it was meant to be used in the My New Friends scene in Secrets of the Jungle. Then it makes total sense. So it's kind of hard to tell. We have our suspicions, especially since the movie and the album released a week apart in 2021. So that's also a little bit suspicious. But no real proof has come out either way on that, but it's kind of hard to ignore some of that stuff there. All right, we got one more. I did specifically pick an odd number to make it a little less obvious, what that last one would be, if it would be me or you. But here we go.
We talk about it a lot, more than I think just about any other song that is not an opening or an ending to a Pokemon movie or the TV show. And... I think this would have totally worked on, like, To Be a Master as a song there, and I think that kind of shows why.
All right there. So, was that me or was that you?
That was you.
Well, let's find out that.
We talk about it a lot, more than I think just about any other song that is not an opening or an ending to a Pokemon movie or the TV show. And, I think this would have totally worked on, like, To Be a Master as a song there, and I think that kind of shows why.
All right, so you were correct about that. That was a quote from me. So, first of all, what episode do you think that's from?
Don't think songs that should have been like the one where you're talking about if NXS did a Pokemon song.
No, it is not. I did consider
Okay.
picking something from that episode, but I think it would be too easy. I'd really have to narrow it down if we picked one of our if blank did a Pokemon song episode. It would be really
You're
obvious
right,
if
but
one of
I
us was
know.
talking about perfume or In Excess.
Yes.
I think
We know
I
who
think
to,
that I think
really
that
quick.
I think that would have been a little obvious. Certainly, which episode it would have been.
Okay.
But it is not that episode. It is something considerably more recent than that. So.
Could have easily fit
So
on.
maybe I'll give you the other question. What do you think we're talking about? Like what song or what other thing within the franchise do you think we're talking about?
We're talking about something that feels like it could tie to, if not the first movie, the first season, I think. So if it's not that, then maybe something from Pokemon 25.
It is not from Pokemon 25. You are right about it being related to the first movie. I'll give you that.
Okay. Underrated Pokemon songs, perhaps?
It is not from underrated Pokemon songs.
nothing.
But I'll give you a hint. The first word of the episode does end in a past tense. Does end in ed. All right, I'll spoil the episode for you. This is from our disputed Pokemon songs episode.
Okay.
What song do you think we're talking about?
For disputed Pokemon songs that could go on to be a master. I'm sorry, my mind.
Well, let me play it again. I think that if you listen to what I say about it, that might jog your memory.
We talk about it a lot, more than I think just about any other song that is not an opening or an ending to a Pokemon movie or the TV show. And, I think this would have totally worked on, like, To Be a Master as a song. And I think that kind of shows why.
Okay, does that jog your memory a little bit? Remember we talked about
We're a Miracle?
it is not We're a Miracle.
What other song do we talk about? Forever and ever. It's not already considered.
All right, I'll spoil it for you. This is the part where we discussed 6 songs. We did not discuss We're a Miracle in the episode because we kind of talked about it to
not disputed.
well, it doesn't have much use outside of the franchise, and we had talked about it so much during our Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution discussion, considering it's not in that movie. And we've talked about it many other times just because of how well it works despite not being written. There are 2 versions of it, but it doesn't seem like either version was written for the movie. It just happened to be in the right place at the right time. But no, this is a different song on that album. It also dates back to before Pokemon the first movie. It has several versions out there.
Oh. Blah, blah, blah?
No, that's the second movie. This is Making My Way Any Way That I Can.
Oh, okay.
That's the one that has that very complicated history that goes through Winona Judd, Marsha Hines, Billy
Right.
Piper, the version people know, and then like an obscure MTV reality series. There's at least 4 known distinct arrangements, but we do talk about it a lot. We also mentioned it in our Insert a Pokemon Song discussion. Excuse me. What happened there is we each picked a song that we would try to work into the movie itself that is not actually in the movie. You picked I'm a Collector from the Japanese album for the second movie. I picked Making My Way Any Way That I Can. And this is not a slight on the song, but I figured they could have put it as background music in the dock scene where they're in
Right,
the
yeah. and you
building in
kinda
there.
mocked up yeah.
It has some interesting, like, depending on which part of the song they'd use, has some interesting, I guess, I'm not sure what the word you're looking for there is, but the interesting connections to the franchise in the movie, but using it in that scene. So many times I played in someone else's game, this time the game has changed. Sounds a little more ominous if they're about to head out to New Island, This time I'll make the rules, all that fun stuff. So I did, but this is actually from our Disputed Pokemon songs. Because that song has showed up in other places, in case you're wondering, we did call it, kind of unofficially a Pokemon song. It's like the Billy Piper version is by far the most famous version of it. We did acknowledge, like I said, there's a Whoopi Goldberg movie called The Associate it shows up in. And then there's also that Marsha Hines album, and it was a single in Australia that did kind of okay, but nothing special. And then there was Legacy of the Reality Show, but the Pokemon First Movie Soundtrack Double Platinum album seems like the biggest place for that. But those were, like I said, a smattering. If you're watching this on replay or if you're in the chat or whatever, please give us a comment. How many of these could you identify who spoke them? Did you recognize them from episodes? And could you tell what we were talking about? I very likely will bring this back at some point. I want to keep trying different things that we're doing here. But that was a very interesting experiment, I guess. All right. Well, we actually spent quite a bit of time on that, kind of unfortunately. We actually do have one more musical thing we're going to talk about, but we're saving it for our feedback section in this discussion. So let's see here. Let me make sure to turn my recordings on. But like I said, this is going to be a double-header discussion of Pokemon Rumble U for the Wii U, and let's see, and Pokemon Battle Trozei for the 3DS. Both download games. We sort of, shrunk down the discussion a little bit because we're going to talk about 3 songs from each instead of the usual 6 from one game. But we're sort of where we're headed at there. So let's see. Let me go ahead and start the recording on my end. All right. Our levels look pretty good on there. We always do a test stream to make sure. It doesn't always iron everything out, but it does a fairly good job. So let's just leave a little bit of a pause, and then I'll do the introduction for the episode. Hi, folks. Steven here. I'm on the phone with Anne from Pikapi Podcast. And we're doing a little bit of a double header. We're discussing some Pokemon side game music again. But you may remember a couple episodes ago I erroneously said that Gates to Infinity is the last Gen 5 side game. Not true. This time we're going to be talking about the true last Gen 5 side game, which is Pokemon Rumble U on the Wii U. And we're also going to be talking about the first Gen 6 side game, Pokemon Battle Trozei on the 3DS. So yeah, like I said, a double header here. We have compressed things down a little bit so that we can get them in both into hopefully the usual amount of time that we do with this. But we are going to try and hit all the usual information points, and we should be doing a game discussion after the outro. All right, well, we go in chronological order, so the first game is obviously going to be Pokemon Rumble U for the Wii U. And this was released back in 2013. And if you're in Japan, that was released on April 24th. In the EU, it was September 15th. And in North America, it was September 29th. So we're actually almost up to games that are 10 years old. We'll be breaking that with the second half of this doubleheader. But let's sort of talk about our initial experience. Now, this is one of the very few Wii U games we're going to be discussing, I think. Probably the only other Pokemon side game, or really Pokemon, like new Pokemon game that was on the Wii U was the first version of Pokken Tournament. So not a lot to say there, but the Wii U is, pretty modern in terms of sound capabilities. So not a ton to say there. But as far as this game, I mean, it's the third Pokemon Rumble game, and we've still got 2 more to go through. Not to say I absolutely detest the franchise, but might get a little fatigued here. I do remember this being announced. It was big for, mostly actually being one of the first games to use the near-field communication reader on the Wii U gamepad. We'll sort of talk about that in our game discussion. But Anne, I know you were always a little bit late getting into the consoles. So it's usually a little while after it came out. Have you actually had a chance to play this? Do you remember when it was announced? Anything like that?
I do remember when it was announced. I've gotten to play it at kind of the game rooms at conventions and things. And I remember at least when I played it, I probably was when it was just released because it was kind of a big deal at the time. And it was the game everybody wanted to play, which for Pokemon Rumble usually isn't the case in the game room. But I think it was getting a bit of a push because it was brand new, and the Wii U I remember was brand new as well. So, yeah, but I have played it a little because of that.
Yeah, to give some perspective, the Wii U came out in the fall-ish of 2012. So it was less than a year afterwards. Obviously, as I'm sure the folks at home know, the Wii U was not commercially a terribly successful system. It had a lot of great games, mostly from Nintendo and their close affiliates, many of which have gotten sequels or ports to the Switch. But I do remember this game being announced. I did pick it up. I did play through maybe the first, I don't know, third or half of it. I'm not sure exactly how far I got relative to where it was. But for some reasons we'll probably explain in the gameplay discussion at the end of this, I don't think I really got that far into it, even compared to other Pokemon Rumble games, like the original Wii, the Rumble Blast, or the Rumble World that comes out on 3DS a year or so later than this. I think those are all higher in that, and I just didn't feel like completing this, which I guess is kind of sad. But as far as the folks behind it, it's pretty much the usual suspects, I guess you could say. Umbrella, as with all the other Pokemon Rumble games, is the one behind this. And the musician is Miki Obata, who, and I don't suppose you've dug up anything new. We've only got a few more chances on this person to figure out exactly who they are.
Nothing new, but as the last time we brought them up, I'm willing to bet anything within, like, say, the 80s onward probably is one person, and the 90s onward is probably one person, and before that probably another person. I don't think they're the pop star we once thought they might be.
Yeah, go back to some of our earlier Umbrella discussions, and we've tried to bat this around, but we think what might have happened is that a pop musician who had a one-off single in the 60s or 70s might have gotten conflated with this person, in part because it's like apparently kind of an androgynous Japanese name and so on and so forth. So we're really not quite sure. We haven't seen anything else someone by this name has really worked on, so it's kind of hard to say. All right, well, like I said, this is a doubleheader, so we did have to condense things down just a little bit. So we picked out 3 songs from each game, and each of us picked out 3 songs total. But let's see, for this game, Pokemon Wii U, I picked out 1 song, which was Boss Battle 1, and you picked out 2 of the 3 songs for this game. What were they?
Yeah, I picked Meloetta's song, Energetic, and then The Place to Return to, Final. And we probably won't talk about it, but I just want a special mention. Magikarp is All You Need. It's a masterpiece.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly where all these titles come from, if there's a sound test that unlocks at some part, but given the specificity of these titles, it seems like there might be some sort of list in the game or something like that, either internally or through a sound test. Like I said, I never really completed it, so I don't know for sure. Should probably also mention that actually we did make sure to pick songs that were new in this version. This game does recycle a lot of songs from previous Umbrella Pokemon games, going all the way back to Hey You Pikachu. So we did try to be very careful, and that's one reason why the soundtrack isn't as big from a discussion perspective as you might think. But in any case, we'll go to my pick first. This is Boss Battle 1. And you will find the Boss Battle theme from prior Rumble games, and that's, I think, listed as Boss Battle 2 in the track list. But this is a new theme. It sort of consists of a couple different, really 2 main instruments. There's an organ, and I'm not sure exactly how to describe it. It's not really a church organ. It may be more of a ballpark organ now that I think about it, but I'd have to listen to it again. And then it also has a nice little distortion guitar. And unlike, say, the prior Rumble games, which had a boss battle track with a distortion guitar, this one seems like it's being played live, and it gives the song kind of an interesting vibe. And do you have some comments on all of that?
For real, like, it's got a very funk feel, and, like, the sound of the drums are, like, so crisp. It's almost very garage band, and it's like, as you say, the guitar sounds like it was played live. Like, the entire track is just one long guitar solo. This is a very cool track.
Yeah, I'm not sure who did the guitars, especially since I didn't make it to the credits there. It does sound, though, like they brought in somebody. I mean, it could have been Miki themselves or whatever doing the guitar, but it does give it a very interesting vibe, and it was pretty much the most interesting song I picked out from this one. Even so, I'm not sure I have a ton else. It's just listen to it. I think it is definitely one of the better new songs from Rumble U.
Yeah, it definitely has a way of like not being catchy, but being like interesting, and it can both fade into the background or you can pay attention to it for forever on loop. Like as like I don't know, it's great, Aid, I think, in that way.
All right, well, let's go on to your first pick, Anne. This is Meloetta's theme, energetic version. This is a very bright song, I guess, is one way of putting it. Why don't you tell us what stuck out to you for this one?
Yeah, so I love Meloetta, so this was always going to be on my pick. I picked it because it sounds a lot like the kind of idol Japanese pop music that I often come across, like especially when like the young pop idols are starting out. They kind of often have that perfect saccharine sound that I have a deep love for. And I love that they've got this Vox synth to kind of represent Meloetta through it all. There's a lot of little bell-like instruments. It's got a very sweet, but yet energetic, as the title implies, sound to it, and a very full and lush arrangement underneath it.
Yeah, I have a couple notes for this one. Let's see, bright synth choir, question mark. Not sure if that's really supposed to be a choir. Bells, and sort of the non-instrument name I came up with this was Falling Glitter. There's definitely a sparkly quality to this one. And Meloetta, obviously very closely associated with music in its design, whether it's the aria form or the pirouette form in both cases. So not a huge surprise in that it would be have an interesting song to go with it. And anything else you want to say about this track?
I think that choir sound, because it sounds like a lot of early vocal synth, like early Vox vocal imitations synth software sounded like. So I think that's what it is, because they all sounded like a choir in the beginning.
Yeah, so history of synthesizers is definitely something we bring up in our discussions because they get used a lot, either as the actual hardware in the very early games, or as something that is imitated in modern music, which is kind of an interesting, I guess, path or whatever you want to call it.
Or Hatsune Miku, as they will evolve into.
Yeah. Yeah, we're recording this just as those songs have started to come out. We do know that Meloetta is, in fact, associated for the psychic type. For that one is the art there. We don't know what that song will be like for a while, but yeah. All right, and you picked our third song for this game, which is the place to return to, which is like the second phase of the final boss. I have a note or two for this, but why don't you go ahead and let us know what caught your attention?
Yeah, so this kind of has an ascending into space or like descending into the underworld quality. Like you feel like you're entering into a new world for you to have your boss battle. And the music ramps up, and it almost feels like a techno sound with a sensibility of symphonic metal. Like I feel like I'm listening to like a techno or electronic EDM cover of like Through the Fire and the Flames by Dragon Force. Like it's a very interesting use of instruments and sounds and qualities to give you a very epic battle type music.
Yeah, I put down shrill synth, and I think I would be more inclined to say towards the underworld, especially since this is a final boss theme, phase 2 or whatever it is. Didn't get to this part in the game, so I don't have a lot of context for it, but that seems to be kind of where it's going. Not sure what else I can really say about this. I think when we get to my wrap-up, some folks are probably anticipating my overall opinion of the music in this game, but... Anne, anything else you want to put down for this one?
Just that, like, we'll talk about overall later, but I really like this track. I think it has so much potential beyond this game. And I'm almost offended that it's tucked away in this little portion of Rumble U. I would like to see it brought back and more done with it later on in a Pokemon franchise.
Well, given the dissolution of Umbrella and its absorption into, I believe, creatures, I mean, I guess someone owns the music. We'll see what exactly happens with it, if it comes back in some form. But, yeah, like I said, we sort of limited it. There is a ton of music in this game, and there is a decent amount of new music, but there's also a ton of stuff, like I said, going back to Hey You Pikachu on the N64. Like, pretty much every Umbrella, well, maybe not anything from Ranch is in there, but otherwise, I think just about everything is in there. So once you kind of filter it down, you still have a decent amount, but not necessarily a ton. That being said, I do think the new music, I mean, they obviously were taking advantage of the more advanced hardware, the more advanced sound capabilities of the Wii U. I will absolutely say that. That being kind of said, I honestly enjoyed a lot of the prior Umbrella game music more than what they put out in this one. To be honest, I didn't. Well, I had trouble going through the playlist sometimes, especially like I said, whenever one of the new songs from this game would come up. Not that I absolutely hate it. I did notice like "Wet and Wild Battle," one of the first battle tracks that's new. Honestly, kind of reminds me of some of the music from which would come out a year or two later, Splatoon. Nintendo's, I guess, closest thing to a new franchise they launched on the Wii U. But yeah, definitely of the two games we're discussing in this episode, this is my less favored one. I don't know, Anne, I think you had a better opinion of the music of this game than I did, but which is fine. I'm just go ahead.
Overall I don't have a great opinion. I do have a great opinion of Boss Battle 1 and The Place to Return To, and like I say, I'm almost like those are almost, it's not like they're the only tracks that stuck out as being good or anything. It's just that so much is repeated. Those two tracks though sound completely unique, very different from anything else in a lot of Pokemon franchises. And like I said, I'm just almost offended that they're just kind of hiding here and not being, I don't know. Like they just, I think there are two beautiful little gems hiding away in this game. But I don't necessarily have a great opinion overall of the soundtrack.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right to a certain extent there. So, I think the Umbrella Pokemon game we think has maybe the worst music, and it's probably just because of time constraints, is probably Pokemon Dash. We talked about the early DS game a year or two ago. And actually some of that music is brought back, although I think it's, at least one of them is rearranged as like a map theme or something like that. But yeah, I mean, this is the new stuff. Like, I can only assume they just didn't have enough time to write new music for the entire game, and that's why they brought back so much. Is that Nintendo or Pokemon or some combination really wanted to get this out to see if they could bolster the Wii U. And they may have, who knows, pushed this forward. But like I said, I don't think it bothered me as much playing the game, but trying to listen all the way through the soundtrack got to be a little difficult for me.
Fair.
All right. Well, like I said, we'll do a game discussion after the outro, but let's move on to the second game in this discussion, and that is Pokemon Battle Trozei for the 3DS.
Yes.
Now, not unlike Rumble U, this was also a download-only game. And it was released in 2014. Actually, a fairly narrow window of about a week. This was, let's see, March 12th, 2014 in Japan. Let's see, Europe got it March 13th. Australia got it March 14th. And the US got it March 20th. So all within about a week or so of each other, they pushed this out. And like I said, this is the first X and Y side game from that Generation 6. So that makes it fairly special. As far as the initial experience, I mean, maybe this wasn't I know they always do an announcement before it comes out. I don't remember if it was a Nintendo Direct at that point, or if it was more of just like a press release or whatever. It was actually kind of interesting because I definitely picked this up when it came out in the US. And then shortly thereafter was when I went on my 2014 trip to Japan, where I picked up a Japanese 3DS. So I have this on both my US 3DS, new Nintendo 3DS XL or whatever, and also on my Japanese 3DS LL. And I played through the one on my US one pretty much all the way to the end, not to 100% completion. We'll talk more about that maybe in our game discussion. But I definitely played a fair amount of this. And did you get a chance to do this when it came out? Was it sometime later? How did this work out for you?
I did not get to play this one, and oh my gosh, I tried because I love me a Trozei or a Tetris or a Yoshi's Cookie. So I had to watch the Let's Play on this one, which only solidified my desire to own this game. So I will be buying this game, but...
Well, that's going to be difficult. Remember, the eShop is closed.
I know. I may not, unless I find an actual cartridge. I don't think I will have a chance.
And I think this was a download-only game.
No, oh my gosh.
You might have to find one where it's already installed. Although they may, well, I don't know if download codes, if you have one somewhere, if those still work. Because I think there were download codes for this. I can't remember for my Japanese 3DS if I bought it using a download code or if I just installed some money on it or used a gift card, or like an eShop gift card or something. Because remember, the 3DS still region locked. The Switch is much more open in that regard, as were systems prior to the 3DS. So that was a little bit odd there. But in any case, I don't remember exactly how I did it. So you might have to track down one.
Listeners, if any of you have Pokemon Battle Trozei on your DS and are willing to sell me that DS, I think we might have something. Otherwise.
Well, a little more straightforward are the folks behind it. This is a Genius Sonority game. Just to give the sort of the history, remember Genius Sonority, they started off making those GameCube games. They also made the original Trozei, Battle Revolution. By this point, they had kind of been pared down. They were just making puzzle games. We'll be talking about a few more of those. Pokemon Shuffle came out a year or two after this and has some definite similarities. And then the most recent one, Pokemon Cafe Remix, which is still getting some updates. But given the company behind this, it will not surprise you, probably, that the musician is Tsukasa Tawada, who has worked on basically all the Genius Sonority Pokemon games. So not a big surprise there. I suspect that whatever Genius Sonority creates next, there's a good chance he'll be working on that as well. As far as the overall style, there's a decent variety despite the relatively small soundtrack. I think you can listen to the whole thing in under 20 minutes. You can. Which is not unusual for, like an 8 or 16-bit game maybe, but the fact this is a download-only game might also sort of lead to its relatively small soundtrack. It is pretty much all new, although there are some definite similarities that go beyond just having the same person doing the music. But we did pick out 3 songs. I picked 2 and picked 1. Let's see, the ones I picked were the title screen theme and the stage 1 theme. And you picked out 1 song. Which one was that?
I picked out Zutan. Or no, that's not it. I think I auto-corrected here in my thing.
Yeah.
One second, let me look up the actual title just to be sure.
Yeah, I have a K in the middle of that.
Yeah,
so.
Zukan. There we go.
All right. So, yeah, again, a smaller selection because it is a relatively small soundtrack game. But I think we'll have some definite things to say about it. First off, there's the... Okay. We'll start off with one of my picks, which is the title screen theme, obviously kind of important there. This one, it has a kind of an interesting instrumentation. First of all, there are some light bells that start off going upward, I guess. It actually kind of almost sounds kind of like an ice cream truck is sort of the thing I put on there. And did you get that kind of impression from it, or?
I mean, ice cream truck sounds perfect, but yeah, like it's cute with these little high bells and catchy and like sounds very of a specific type of pop idol, like it just needs to be like a little bit more unique and like a Yasutaka Nakata sort of song, like that Kari Pami Pami would have sang or something like that. Like it's just that cute level of cute.
Yeah, and then I'm not sure what the main instrument is on that. Yeah, the however that goes is definitely something a little different. I'm not sure what kind of instrument that is. Some sort of synth, I think it is, and that loop sort of makes up the title screen there. So I think it does a pretty good job. It's definitely fitting for a puzzle game, and it's I definitely I'm not going to sit on the title screen of this for a super long time, but I don't know exactly where I wanted to go with that. But I think it definitely works for the game. All right, Anne, let's talk about your pick for this game. This is Zukan. This one is, I think it's used in some of the menus or something like that. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Let me know, Anne.
No, that makes sense because Zukan is like a field guide, like an illustrated like reference book. So it makes sense that it would be used for menus.
All right. And it's kind of more drum-based than anything. There are some more non-drum instruments, but it's definitely... Like, I don't like to use the word tribal because that has some negative connotations, but you might kind of get what I'm saying there. And what made you choose this one?
Yeah, so like the drums and the flute together, along with like a lot of the other percussion type instruments that I couldn't always identify, like they give it such a unique quality. Very jungle-like, but in some ways also very traditionally Japanese, like a very koto drum-heavy folk song sort of thing. So it's just got a very fun rhythm to it, a fun use of instruments that feel like you're going on an expedition or an adventure, but it's varied enough in its choice of instruments and styles that like it doesn't necessarily only tie you to, say, the jungle feel or the desert feel or the Japan topography feel. It's varied enough that you could be going on an adventure anywhere and filling your Zukan, as it were.
Yeah, the game structurally does have a bit of a safari vibe to it. You are going around capturing Pokemon from, obviously going from Gen 1 all the way up to the X and Y game, since that's when this came out. So that does seem kind of fitting there. Anything else you want to sort of call out about this track?
Not really. It's cute. Like, it's fun.
Yeah, it's not one of those, like, I'd recognize it pretty quickly if I heard it, but I don't think I'd be able to, in part because it's so percussion-based, I don't think I'd be able to list it out there. Like, similar problem with other percussion-based tracks in video games. Just to throw a name out there, like, I can kind of remember, like, 65 million BC in Chrono Trigger, but that's a little hard to quote as well. All right. Well, like I said, there's not a huge soundtrack, but I did pick. Sorry. All right. Well, my second pick and the last song we'll be discussing for this game is Stage 1. And what kind of stuck out to me is that if you listen to this one, it sure sounds like it could have fit into some other Genius Sonority Pokemon games. Basically, it has a very energetic Western harmonica sound to it. It has a very fun vibe to it, I would say, as well. I think this is usually something that plays on some of the easier levels within each area. And did anything sort of pique your interest when you listen to this one?
Yeah, that it would fit perfectly in some parts of Pokemon Coliseum, absolutely. But yeah, like the harmonica just makes it. Like, this is a very rustic Wild West song, and I like that, like, the harmonica and electric guitar together is just a good sound. It is a good sound. So I like that for this track.
Yeah, the instruments definitely mesh well. I do kind of wonder, going back to Pokemon Coliseum and Gale of Darkness, I do kind of wonder, like, if this was intended, like, there isn't really, like, there is a lot of Western elements in those games, but maybe there's not. Maybe this is derived from a cutscene. Like I said, we're kind of speculating here. It's possible all this stuff was original and they just told them to do stuff similar, or it's possible these were some ideas that didn't quite make it into some of the other games. There are a couple other tracks on this one that sound very Pokemon Battle Revolution-y. So it's, like I said, I don't know why we keep having all these suspicions whenever we do a Genius Sonority Pokemon game. I think we'll have fewer of them with Pokemon Shuffle. when we cover that sometime in the next year or so. All right. Well, as far as the overall opinion, we kind of mentioned, like I said, when we did the original Trozei, they were all very short tracks pretty much. And we theorized back then that they may have been left over as trainer encounter themes from like Colosseum/Gale of Darkness. Just because they were very short, it's like maybe they wanted to do that, but because it was a disc-based GameCube game, they had to put that away, and they end up reusing it for that. For this one, there are definitely tracks that sound very, very much like the battling games that Genius Sonority put out for the GameCube and the Wii. All that suspicion, but if these are, leftovers, they're still pretty good. And given that the game has, being a puzzle game where you clear lots of tiles, it has a very busy sound effect thing here. So it's not like these sound, just so inferior to there. Even when you're playing the game, because there are so many sound effects, they actually have a tendency to cover up a lot of the music in there in a way that you wouldn't have gotten in some of the Pokemon battling 3D games on the GameCube and Wii. So I can appreciate sort of the difference in that regard. I don't know. And another one of my mouthfuls there. What are your kind of overall thoughts on this one?
I mean, as you say, with like similarities to other Genius Sonority games, I mean, nothing is really created in a vacuum. Like all these people were if they didn't work on the previous game, they were in the building when their coworkers were working on, the Colosseum and Gale of Darkness and everything. So it's like, if it wasn't consciously like a leftover, it's not a huge stretch to say like the vibes of certain tracks, carried over to the next project. But yeah, like it is interesting that like for Trozei, like the songs are like, on the one hand, they're not as involved as other games, but they're still a little more involved than you'd expect to be from what is essentially like a Tetris game. And you kind of want easy listening, like that you don't have to think about because you're focused on what you're doing. So I don't know. It's like, it would be very interesting to like round up those people and kind of like ask them a bit about the creative process. And like, again, were these kind of just, adaptations of tracks that were left over from another game? Or like, did you consciously create these tracks for this game specifically because of what reasons? Like, I don't know. It would be very interesting to talk to them.
Yeah, regardless, I'm fairly certain like the title screen and a couple of the other ones are very likely new and created for this. That seems very likely. Although, one thing I want to say about the instrumentation, I do recommend at some point you listen to this with headphones on, because the fidelity does seem very, very much in line, by the way, with Genius Sonority's GameCube and Wii games, in that there is, like, it's not something that was designed for the tiny little speakers on the 3DS. It's got a fair amount of bass and whatnot. I recommend, if you haven't done so, to listen to the soundtrack on a good set of headphones, or on your, if you have a good stereo system or something like that, pipe it through there. Because I think you'll be surprised at how much they did, or whatever you want to say there. So. All right. So yeah, that was a definite a double header of those two. Like I said, we will be doing a game discussion after the outro for both of these. But first of all, but next off, I have some feedback to go over. Now, I do want to apologize to the folks watching this live. I unfortunately did not have time with all the other stuff to put together a full-on PowerPoint presentation for this. So I'm just going to be reading this out of a text file where I copied and pasted some of the stuff in there. But in any case, I'll do my usual introduction here. So if you have, and remember, if you have any thoughts on anything we discussed, you can always leave a comment on a video. You can drop us an email, pokepress@gmail.com, or you can go to @pokepress on, well, I guess they're trying to call it X these days, and possibly move it to a paid service, so.
Whatever.
The service formerly known as Twitter, so we'll see how all that shakes out by the time this makes it to the podcast feed. That'll be very interesting. But in any case, I do have a couple pieces of feedback here. Let's see. This one is a comment on a video. This is my interview with James D. Train Williams. So he's known for a couple things. Most notably, he does the singing portions of the original English Poke Rap, all the way back from. It kind of is the first English song to be recorded in full, at least that we heard in full, since the TV show theme and Pokemon Dance Mix didn't come out until the following year or whatever. But this is from DJ Bobby May, and he mentioned that he jams the old school D-Train albums on the reg, and but didn't realize until he saw this interview that he was the same guy who was on the vocals of the original Poke Rap, which was very interesting. Thank you for this. I always appreciate that. So it sounds like, based on some of the stuff here, that DJ Bobby May was, not old enough to have remembered D-Train stuff when it originally came out. D-Train was very popular in like the early to mid 80s. Was his sort of normal career before he went into the commercials biz as a voiceover artist there. And I replied to him, it's always fun when a connection hits you in the face like that. I mean, there's all sorts of weird little connections that you find doing these things. And do you have one of your own you wanted to share?
One of my own connections of...
That you've discovered during your research that
all
of a sudden, this, it's kind of like this one.
Okay.
Well... Sorry to put you on the spot.
Okay, so Namie Amuro, who recorded a song for the second movie on the Japanese side, Toi et Moi, when she received her early training in the music biz at she's of Okinawan descent, so she went to a school in Okinawa, the Okinawa Actors School. There is a comic book about that school specifically, and references Namie Amuro, and one of the main characters is actually Yamada Yu, and I was like a big fan of that manga series when I was in high school. I was also a major fan of a lot of Japanese pop, and this one band in particular called Cartoon, which we probably will never talk about in the show. But the Okinawa Actors School, Namie Amuro went on to do Pokemon. But one of the teachers, Anna Makino, at that school went on to form a band called Love Junks, or not a band, a dance group called Love Junks, which is a dance group for individuals with Down syndrome. And then once on a charity promotion called 24-Hour Telebi, which is basically like a telethon, Cartoon performed with Love Junks on the Budokan stage, and that was the moment when my BB Explosion manga met Cartoon, met Namie Amuro Pokemon connection, and it all collided, and I was the happiest young woman who ever existed, and I was the only one who knew who all those people were. So thank you.
Yeah. Listening to this podcast, as well as Anne's podcast, Pikapi podcast, I'm sure will up your 6 degrees of separation game. But yeah, so it's always interesting when you finally realize connections like that.
Fun fact for 6 degrees of separation, because Pikachu, Ikue Otani's voice, is used in both the English and the Japanese cast, you can connect actors from the entire globe through the Pokemon series. So have fun playing.
Yeah, so always glad to help there. All right, well, I've got another thing here, but I need to frame it a little bit. So at Worlds and at the weeks after, Pokemon put out a little bit of a mini-series called Path to the Peak, centered around the Pokemon trading card game. We're not going to summarize the whole thing, but it sort of goes over a new young player, ascending the ranks and so on and so forth. And in one of the episodes, it's the second or the third, it must be the one that goes to internationals. They're riding in the car with I think the main character's dad. There's like 3 kids in the back and the dad's in the front, and he turns on the radio, and it starts playing not the original English Pokemon theme, but actually Pokemon World from the second season, the Orange Islands arc, the TV version specifically, which was kind of an interesting inclusion for a couple of reasons. First of all, there are localized versions of this, and as you'd expect in like the Spanish version or whatever, they do play the Spanish, one of the Spanish, we've gone over this before, there's multiple significantly different versions of Spanish in the world. But in any case, it does that. And the other interesting thing is one of the languages this is localized into is Japanese. And Pokemon World, prior to this, has not really existed in the Japanese lexicon because their equivalent song is Rival, which the reason they probably didn't use it there is they would have had to, like, you can see the people singing along, they'd have to reanimate their mouths and bodies and whatnot in order to swap the song out completely. So it was probably easier, since Pokemon World already existed in a bunch of languages, to just sort of backport it to the Japanese version. And you were definitely aware of this. You haven't really watched the series, but you are definitely aware of this when it happened back in August. I think it was just a little bit after we recorded our previous discussion. What were your kind of thoughts on all of this?
Yeah, I became aware of it when basically the clip of it being adapted into Japanese started making the rounds, and just being surprised at how well it worked. Like for the translation for that scene, because it definitely has vibes of just, this is a song that was popular 20 years ago and now my dad is singing it. Kind of like that translation worked way better than it had any right to. I'm so happy. And it just works.
And not being fluent in Japanese, I was kind of curious. I do know that they seem to have changed out like the background instruments, rather than just starting with an instrumental version of Pokemon World, which maybe they didn't have access to. They sort of had to recreate it. So if you listen to like the drums and whatnot, you'll notice they do sound different, even though like you can more or less tell they are singing more or less the same song there. But I don't know, Anne, anything else, like any details of that adaptation you wanted to sort of point out, or things that you think would be difficult?
Without the lyrics in front of me, I don't remember. But I just remember being hit by it and being like, because I didn't actually realize which song it was until I started listening to the lyrics. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is Pokemon World. Why is this working? This should not be working. And it was so fun and delightful.
Yeah. So in case you're curious about how this ended up there, well, unfortunately, we can't really answer that question. I did try and contact some of the folks who worked on the music portion. I think Ed Goldfarb was on it, but they also brought in a few other people. So Joff Lee Music on Twitter /X/ whatever it's known by the time you hear this, says, it's fun seeing how hyped people are about hearing the two insert songs. I'm not sure. I did look through the other episodes. I didn't see another one in there, but maybe I missed something. He says he wasn't responsible for that decision, though, and he's not really sure. I'm sure it was, if it wasn't one of the direct music people, it was, either the script writers came up with it or someone from the Pokemon Company International, presumably, since it is Pokemon World and not Rival. Like I said, the advantage of Pokemon World is just that because it has already been translated into other languages, you just have to backport it to Japanese and maybe one or two others. That probably made it a lot easier than doing Rival for, 10 different languages. But yeah, so it's kind of a mystery there. But like I said, I think that's a song that doesn't, outside of, I guess, the second movie, maybe doesn't get as much attention, certainly as the first season Pokemon theme, nor as much as the third season theme Pokemon Johto. So, but yeah, it's definitely something we wanted to sort of talk about here just because it is kind of in a very odd and interesting situation. Anything else you want to add, Anne?
It has nothing to do with music, but have you been watching Path to the Peak? Because I haven't.
Well, there's only about 4 episodes, so it wrapped up in late August or early September with the... well, I don't want to spoil the ending, but some of the folks out there can probably guess what happened.
Did it have like a Heart of the Cards style vibe, I guess, is the one question that's burning my mind.
I'm not sure exactly, to be honest. But
okay. I'll answer that myself when I watch it.
But yeah, so I mean, I enjoyed it more than the Arceus Chronicles, which is what they debuted at last year's Worlds. But that's kind of a discussion in and of itself that we won't get into. But yeah, so I do try and source information from conversations I've had, wherever. But if you want to get in touch with us again, that is, let's see, pokepress@gmail.com, at Pokepress on whatever Twitter is called when you hear this. Or you can just leave a comment on one of these videos, and we will try to work that into a future discussion. Okay, one second. Let me switch back to my regular notes here. All right. Well, so we have really truly gotten into the Generation 6 XY generation of side games. And the next one on that list is, well, it may or may not be a game depending on who you talk to, but this is Pokemon Art Academy. So it's kind of actually a crossover with the Art Academy series, I think, that started on the DS. And it borrows a number of elements from there. This was kind of an interesting one for me, in part because when this came out, it came out in Japan first by several months ahead of the US. And as a result, since I had a Japanese 3DS at that point, I played it there in Japanese. So that was an interesting experience. And I don't know, did you actually get a chance to play this one? This one does exist on cartridge, so you can try and dig that out if you need to get a chance to play it for our next discussion.
Yeah, I actually didn't become aware of it until very recently. And I had been planning to like make it my Christmas gift to myself. Now it might become my Canadian Thanksgiving gift to myself, so I can have it in time to do an episode on it.
Yeah, I don't, this, I think this one has pretty laid back music as you'd expect for a drawing game, effectively speaking. But I definitely remember going through with this and all that stuff. Until then, Anne, thank you very much for being on.
Thank you.
This has been Stephen Reich. All right, folks, thanks. All right, and then we'll just leave a little bit of a pause here and do our game discussion.
May I run and just fill up my water again?
Oh, sure, if you need to do that.
Awesome, I'll be right back.
I'll do the same.
Sorry, everybody, I'm back. And I don't know if you can see, I got a brand new Magikarp. For those of you who do not listen to Pikapi podcast, the podcast I host, I love Magikarp. Magikarp is like the manifestation of my soul. So I'm very excited to have this. How do these cameras work? This guy, brightening up my home.
All right, so as usual, we're doing, I guess, a doubleheader game discussion as well. So leave a little pause. Let me grab a quick little bit of water. And we'll sort of go from there. Okay, well, now let's do our doubleheader game discussion. We'll start off with Rumble U. Now, of course...
Days only, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
What was that?
I think that was my phone.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we did keep Anne's phone around. Last time we had to use that for the actual live stream because her internet was not cooperating. So we did have it here as just in case. In any case, let me just do that introduction again.
Sure.
Okay, well, I guess we have to have a doubleheader game discussion as well now. So let's start off with Rumble U. So in some ways it's similar to the prior Rumble games, but one big mechanical difference is that pretty much all the combat takes place in an arena, whereas the first couple games you would go through a number of hallways and then come up to a boss eventually. This one is pretty much all just in a singular arena for each level. To be honest, I think that's one of the reasons I don't like this version as much, is that it seems to make it less interesting, less structured, so on and so forth. Also, I believe it's a very linear path through the map there, area by area, or level by level, as opposed to the prior games where you had some choices about which order you wanted to go through stuff in. So I think that may be one thing that turned me off. I don't know. Anne, did that affect your enjoyment or something like that?
I mean, as far as the... I like the concept. I like the real-time battle quality to it, and whenever I played it in the cons, you could do multiplayer, so you could play with other people, and all of of you like battling together on the screen. Like I liked that, but like there's a general like what is the plot of this game? Because like you start off, it looks like the Pokemon got washed down the river and have to make their way back, but then at some point you're all toys. I don't I like
Yeah.
so that's that it, like ruins my enjoyment. It's like I don't understand why are they toys for the third game in a row. Why?
I mean, I think they're always toys in the Rumble series, but I think this one does a bit more of a, because see, there's an opening cutscene where a guy trips on an evil glowing Pokeball or something like that, and dumps a bunch of them into the river, and they, yeah, I mean, there are little cutscenes in between the levels, but you talk about the multiplayer, and I mean, that's been around since I believe the original Rumble on the Wii, and I think, maybe with the arena-based combat, because, in the Wii version, you had to, if you're going down a long hallway, that all scrolls versus the arena, which is more, I guess, confined and doesn't need to move the camera as much. So maybe that works out better that way. And I can see it, at cons, any sort of multiplayer, like the stadium games, always popular at major Pokemon events. People love doing the mini games there with other folks or against the computer. So this sort of kind of fits into the same vibe. And I guess, like I said, maybe the arena-based shapes did that.
Yeah, like I said, I really liked the general arena style and like the battling. Like it is a fun, like kind of. I mean, it's almost like the whole game's a mini game, really. Like, but it's like it's very hard to like get into it. It's like why are we here? What are we fighting for? What's happening? But like the actual gameplay is pretty fun, and the actual like environment is pretty fun.
Yeah. I don't think Rumble was ever supposed to be as plot driven as, say, Mystery Dungeon or
Yeah,
anything like that.
yeah,
but
maybe I'm hoping for too much here.
perhaps. But in any case, I mean, there's some other stuff, like every level has some achievements that you're trying to go for at the end to get some rewards. There's also, there are some new obstacles, I think, or maybe they're just used differently. Like there's some rockets you can attack in certain stages and so on and so forth. Like I said, from a gameplay perspective, it didn't really do a ton for me. I think it was, more linear than sort of the other games. So I think that was kind of a thing. But I can definitely see in like a convention atmosphere or whatever, where you're only playing a few people at once, I think that can work out fairly well. So it might be better in that setting than it is otherwise. Now, the other thing we should mention is that the Wii U gamepad has an NFC reader on it. And for this game, they put out a bunch of figurines. Now, this is still like a year or so before Amiibo was a thing. So this is before that. And I think that pad will read out most things that are like have an RFID tag of some sort on them. And I think I should have, I'm sorry to the folks at home, I should have really looked up a video of this because I never did this myself. But it must give you something in game, some in-game points or something like that whenever you scan one of those in. But I don't suppose at the con anyone had any of those. I think you can scan. No. I think once Amiibos came out, you could also scan in those, and it would do something in the game from there. And there is music for that area as well. So, like I said, I don't know if this ended up being a test bed for Amiibo or what there. If they were just trying to get some extra money in there or what there. I don't know.
Who can say?
But yeah, so like I said, I can't give a full review since I kind of gave up about a third of the way through or whatever. At some point I might go back to it, but I didn't have a huge desire to do so for this discussion, which I think says a fair amount about it. I think it probably is among the... I've never played the mobile game, but among the 4 console/handheld games, this might be the one I enjoyed the least, so... Not a terrible game. It is still true to the Rumble formula. But, yeah, I'm not sure it did a whole lot for me. I don't know. Anne, what was your kind of... You seem to have enjoyed it while you played it. Do you think you would have enjoyed it if you kept trying to play it, like, I don't know about what you consider long-term, but you kind of get what I'm saying there.
I mean, it was definitely fun. And watching the Let's Play to kind of refresh for this podcast, like, kind of remind me like, oh yeah, that looks fun. I think I'd enjoyed it if I had it, but I don't know that I'd buy it for myself. And in the, there's only so many hours in a day that I have to play video games when I should be doing a million other things. Like, this is not high on the list of, like, when I have that time that I can devote to video games that like, we're gonna finish Tears of the Kingdom, like, someday. Like, so, or we're gonna finish Scarlet and Violet, or, so, like, this is not high on that list. So, but that is not to say it is not fun or that I didn't enjoy it.
All right, well, let's move on to our second game, and that is Battle Trozei. Now, of course, this is a follow-up to Pokemon Trozei, which was an early-ish DS game. Like, it actually was Gen 3. So we actually, effectively skipped 3 generations to make it here, because it actually came out before Diamond and Pearl did on the DS. This one is an XY side game, the first of those. So it goes all the way up through Kalos. But as far as kind of what's changed, other than, like I said, a hardware spec bump, obviously, between the original DS and the 3DS, it says Battle Trozei, and I think that fits because there is much more of a combat aspect to the gameplay here. Like, in the original game, you were just matching stuff up to sort of clear out, like, free Pokemon from, like, the clutches of the evil Lunatone team or whatever. There was some sort of Soul Rock Lunatone thing going on there. And you were just trying to clear out those and match them. And obviously you were trying to collect a bunch of Pokemon there, which kind of boiled down to just kind of hoping you got a Ditto at the same time as one of the rare Pokemon there. And some of that stuff is still around, but the actual, like, framing device is much more focused on battling. You're actually trying to catch all these Pokemon in there, and sometimes there's more than one, and the Pokemon can attack your board and stuff like that. So, like I said, the battle portion of it is definitely in there. I assume that was something you noticed watching footage relatively quickly, Anne.
Yeah, no, it definitely seemed like there was just a little bit more involved, a little bit more, I don't know, options for things to happen to you or to, like, affect things around you instead of, like, it just being a matching game. And that was exciting. Also, way more Dittos than I ever remember in any of the other games.
Yeah, I think the playfield might actually be wider on this, but I can't remember for sure.
Maybe.
But yeah, definitely some more game aspects. And like, the attack things that the other Pokemon do, you have a life meter that if it goes down, you lose the stage. They can also, like I said, they can eventually bust into your playfield if they do enough damage. And there are ways you can repair and heal some of that stuff as well. You do get a choice of what Pokemon you want to bring with you in addition to the ones that appear there normally, which is, like I said, kind of an interesting choice that actually does matter in some cases. In part because one of the things this does implement is a typing system. Now, each Pokemon only has one type out of the possible 2. But depending on what Pokemon you start your clearing session with will determine what type of damage you do to the Pokemon. And type advantage definitely comes into effect there. So that's nice that it acknowledges that. I assume, Anne, you had a similar reaction. I assume you noticed that in the footage there.
Yeah, no, it definitely, again, makes just for a little bit more brain power, a little bit more strategy when you're playing this game. I can't remember. Did the Trozei before this have that feature as well? I know the first one didn't, but...
Well, this is only the second Trozei game. You might be thinking
sorry,
of Pokemon.
Was there not a Ruby and Sapphire one? Never mind.
Or a Diamond. Well, the first one was a Ruby and Sapphire generation, Gen 3 game.
There wasn't one before this. Okay, yeah, I don't know what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
then.
it's Trozei, Battle Trozei, Pokemon Shuffle, Pokemon Cafe Remixed.
Okay.
Is the order there. So this is the second of the Genius Sonority puzzle games for Pokemon that they've made. So you might be...
yeah.
Shuffle does carry a lot of this stuff over, but it also has some very different mechanics there. And then sort of the other feature is that, sort of the object of this game is that it will, you'll go through stage by stage. Your goal is to do basically enough damage to capture each Pokemon in there. But not every stage, but most stages at least, have usually some hidden Pokemon. Sometimes they'll pop up at the very end. Sometimes you'll see a gap in sort of the little timeline for that stage.
the game doesn't really give you an exact hint. Usually it involves doing some sort of particular type of clearing operation or bringing certain Pokemon and using those in the battle. So it can be a little bit hard to figure it out, but there are hidden Pokemon in a lot of the stages, and if you want to collect all of them, you can certainly look up online. People have figured out exactly what you need to do in each stage to find the hidden Pokemon and so on. You can do that. I do kind of wish it had some sort of hint system. Maybe not exactly. Eventually we'll get to new Pokemon Snap, and that does have a hint system where it sort of explains, gives you some clues on how you might find a certain Pokemon in a certain environment based on some text it gives you.
Right.
I'm not sure how that would have worked here if they had decided to do that, but I would have appreciated that. Overall, though, I do feel like this is, a more complete game. Like if the capacity that existed for the first Pokemon Trozei, I'm guessing it would have been a download title of some sort. Like if it had not come out until like the DSi or something like that, and they could fit it in the space there. They might have put it on the DSi shop there. This one, of course, like I said, the 3DS basically had built-in shop capability within it, which, as we mentioned, ended earlier this year. And you could totally, but it is that kind of game. It does fit well, as a lot of puzzle games do. But I kind of lost interest after I had completed the game and didn't feel like going back and doing every level over again to get every Pokemon in there or to beat my score. I'm not even 100% sure if there's a co-op or a versus mode in this. There might not be. Certainly a good game, and I think if I had to pick between this and the original Trozei, I would play this. What are your thoughts, Anne? You obviously don't have experience really with this Battle Trozei, but which one, I guess, looks better to you?
Definitely this one looks like better, more polished. It looks really fun. It looks like something I very much want. It also looks like something like I would probably now, we talk about only so many hours in the day for video games. Like, I'd never go to work. I'm a sucker for these types of games, unfortunately. But it looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah, and it makes better use of the Pokemon mechanics, like type effectiveness and some of the I know I think Chansey and Mr. Mime. Like Chansey will heal up your meter, your health meter, and then Mr. Mime can repair the outside of the game board after Pokemon have attacked it.
Mm-hmm.
And there might be a few other Pokemon that have abilities like that. So that's actually kind of a nice thing, and definitely shades of what we would see in Pokemon Shuffle Genius Sonority's next game that we'll talk about. I don't know, like I said, in a few months or whenever. I forget exactly when it came out, but all right. Well, like I said, doubleheader of games there, and I think the second game ended up turning out a little bit better. All right, let's go ahead and stop the recording there.
All right.
So, yeah, I don't know when we'll do another one like this. That is a double header like this. Like I said, I didn't want to totally skip Rumble U, despite my kind of misgivings about both the game and some of the new music in there.
There's still a couple things we're talking about.
Yeah, and like I said, definitely when I get to editing the Gates to Infinity episode, I'll have to put in a little thing. Actually, stay tuned. For all of that. But we always appreciate folks hanging around for this. If you have, like I said, any comments on either of these games, their music, or anything else we talked about in this discussion, please do leave us a comment. We always, always, always appreciate that and want to hear more. Like I said, we will try and work that into a future discussion. Other than that, Anne, did you want to, have you gotten any new episodes of your podcast out recently?
The last one we got was hey everybody, I run Pikapi podcast. It's a podcast about the Pokemon anime. And we're in Hoenn right now, and we recently got to a sort of filler episode, but not really a filler episode because May caught a new Pokemon for her team. So we get a Bulbasaur. It's very exciting.
Yeah, usually a main character catching, evolving, or releasing a Pokemon is not a filler episode.
Yeah, it's not a filler episode, but you want right up until the point where she gets that Bulbasaur on her team, you're like, this is
feels
filler.
like filler.
Yeah, you're like, what is
I remember talking about that. There was an episode in Johto where one of Brock's Pokemon evolved, and you called that a filler episode. I was like, well, usually that's an automatic disqualifier for filler.
usually? But
If,
Pokemon
if one
has a
of
way
the main
where
characters'
just like,
Pokemon evolves,
like when
usually
it happens with Ash, they make it an event. When it happens with May or Brock, it's like whatever. It just happens.
it gets tossed into the episode or something like that. Like I forget. Like I know, did you catch it a Lotad or a Lombre? I know it evolves at least one stage over the course of that arc.
Yeah, he caught a Lotad, eventually became a Lombre. At some point, it's kind of become Ludicolo. But,
Right. So,
but yeah, like I said, Brock's, it's hardly ever an event.
Yeah, so my opinion on Brock is that if it hadn't been for that second season replacement going apparently so badly, I do enjoy Tracy. We will be mentioning him some during our next discussion because it's a little. I find it a little odd that they didn't find a way to work him in there, but
Right.
you'd think, but
Tracy,
I guess obviously probably some contractual stuff in there, but all the same, it would have been a good shot. But in any case, I think Brock stayed at least one region too long, possibly two.
he's doing his best.
And I think that would have been, I would have felt that way even without the voice actor switch over, even if Eric Stewart had kept voicing him. I don't think that was a thing there. But yeah, so as far as other stuff, I am going to try and get, probably not this weekend, but maybe sometime later this week, the Super Smash Brothers Brawl episode out on the podcast feed. That one's going to be a lot of, that one was a big fun discussion. If you want to take a look at the raw version that we recorded early this year, you can totally dig through the channel here and dig that one up. This will obviously be more polished and whatnot. But that is my next goal there. I am next weekend. I'm over at regionals, not as a competitor, but as a spectator in Peoria, Illinois. So I'll be headed down for that. So if you do want to see me there, you can always say hi. If you want one of our promotional items, I should have flyers, CDs, and cassettes. That last one is not a joke. I really have audio tape. So definitely will try and do that. But until then, thanks for listening, folks.
Bye, guys.